It was supposed to be a night of celebration, laughter, and ringing in the new year with my closest friends. Instead, it became a night etched into my memory as the most terrifying experience of my life. Okay, so start my story. I had been invited to a New Year's Eve party at an old friend's house, someone I hadn't seen in years. His name is Ryan. He had recently inherited a mansion on the outskirts of town, a massive Victorian-style house that looked like it belonged in a horror movie. The invitation said, "Come for the party, stay for the surprises." It sounded intriguing. The house was stunning, its grandeur shadowed by its eerie emptiness. I arrived at around 9 p.m. The place was already filled with people I didn't recognize, but the festive mood was infectious. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and Ryan greeted me with a wide grin. "I'm glad you came," he said, patting me on the back. "This house has been in my family for decades, but tonight we're going to make it ours." I laughed nervously. Something about his tone felt off, but I brushed it aside. At the stroke of midnight, Ryan announced a game. "Everyone, gather in the living room," he shouted. "We're going to play a little scavenger hunt. But here's the twist. Everything you find will reveal a secret about this house." The crowd cheered, but I felt a chill run down my spine. The house already gave me a bad vibe, and the idea of exploring its dark corners didn't sit well with me. Still, I didn't want to be the odd one out. Ryan handed each of us an envelope with cryptic instructions. Mine read, "Find the mirror that reflects the past." I had no idea what it meant, but I started wandering through the house. The further I went from the main party, the quieter and darker it became. The air felt colder, and the atmosphere shifted from festive to oppressive. I finally found a large antique mirror in one of the upstairs bedrooms. Its frame was ornate, almost too intricate, with carvings of faces that seemed to follow my every move. As I looked into it, the reflection wasn't quite right. The room behind me looked the same, but I wasn't in the reflection. Instead, there was a woman, a pale figure dressed in a tattered gown, standing perfectly still, staring at me. I turned around quickly, but no one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, the woman was closer, her face twisted into an expression of pain and anger. I stumbled backward, my breath caught in my throat. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper right next to my ear. "Help me." Panicking, I ran back toward the party, but the music and laughter seemed farther away than they should have been. I found a door that I hadn't noticed before, slightly ajar, with a faint light coming from inside. Against my better judgment, I pushed the door open. It led to a small, dimly lit room that reeked of decay. In the center was a table with old, yellowed photographs spread out. Each photo showed a group of people posing in front of the house, but their faces were scratched out. My heart sank when I spotted a fresh photo of the current party. My face was scratched out, too. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Then I heard footsteps above me, heavy and deliberate, as if someone was pacing. A hidden staircase in the corner of the room caught my eye, leading down into what I assumed was the basement. I didn't want to go, but the footsteps were coming closer, and I felt trapped. The basement was worse than I imagined, cold, damp, and filled with old furniture and cobwebs. In the far corner, I saw a faint, flickering light. I approached it cautiously and found an old projector running on its own, playing a black and white film. The film showed people partying in the same house, but the scene quickly turned gruesome. Shadows moved across the screen, attacking the partygoers, dragging them into the darkness. Then the screen went blank, and a single word appeared: run. I bolted upstairs, finally breaking into the main party. To my horror, the guests were no longer celebrating. They were standing completely still, their faces blank, as if in a trance. Ryan was in the center, holding the same scratched-out photo I had seen earlier. "The house chooses," he said, his voice hollow. "It needs a soul to stay alive." Before I could react, the lights flickered, and the guests turned toward me, their empty eyes locking onto mine. Adrenaline kicked in, and I ran for the front door, but it wouldn't open. The walls seemed to shift, closing in around me. I remembered the mirror and sprinted back upstairs, hoping it might somehow be a way out. When I reached the room, the mirror was glowing faintly. The woman in the reflection was now smiling, her hand extended as if inviting me to join her. With no other choice, I reached out. The moment my hand touched the glass, I felt a jolt, and everything went black. I woke up outside, lying in the snow. The mansion was gone, replaced by an empty lot. My hands were shaking as I checked my phone. It was January 2nd. I had been missing for over 24 hours. To this day, I don't know what happened to the others at the party or how I escaped. But every New Year's Eve, I see that woman in the mirror, her smile growing wider, as if waiting for me to return. And maybe one day, I will. The woman in the mirror didn't just haunt my dreams, she became a part of my life. At first I thought it was just paranoia, leftover fear from that cursed night. But things started happening that I couldn't explain. Whenever I passed a mirror, I saw her, even if only for a split second. She was always there, lingering just out of reach, her expression growing more sinister with each passing day. One night, about a week after the New Year, I woke up in a cold sweat. My bedroom mirror, which usually faced the wall, was somehow turned toward me. The faint outline of her figure shimmered in the glass. She whispered, "You owe me." I tried to move on, but the signs kept piling up. My reflection began to shift. Sometimes it didn't mimic my movements. Other times it looked distorted, as if my face wasn't my own. The worst part was the dreams. In them, I was back in the mansion, wandering its endless halls, hearing the laughter of the guests and Ryan's cryptic voice echoing through the dark. The house chooses. In one dream, I saw the guests again, but their faces were decayed, their eyes hollow. They whispered in unison, "Bring another soul." A few days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It had no return address, just my name scrawled in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, the group picture from the party. This time every face was scratched out except mine. Below the photo were 3 words, "Bring them back." I was frozen with fear. Who sent this? What did they mean by "bring them back"? Determined to find answers, I started researching the mansion. It turned out that Ryan's family had a dark history. The house had been the site of several disappearances over the years, all linked to New Year's Eve parties. The rumors were chilling. The mansion was said to be cursed, feeding on the energy of its guests to sustain itself. Those who survived were marked, destined to bring more souls to the house to keep the curse alive. I realized with horror that I was now a part of this cycle. That night, the woman in the mirror grew bolder. She didn't just appear in reflections anymore. She started showing up in shadowy corners of my room, her figure barely visible but unmistakable. "You have until next New Year's Eve," she whispered one night. "Bring them to the house, or I'll take you instead." I knew I couldn't give in to her demands, but I also couldn't ignore the growing darkness around me. I felt watched everywhere I went, my reflection becoming a stranger, my shadow moving when I didn't. Desperate, I reached out to a local paranormal investigator, a woman named Claire, who had experience dealing with haunted objects and curses. She listened to my story and didn't dismiss me as crazy. Instead, she warned me, "This isn't just about the house. The woman in the mirror is tethered to you now. If you don't break the bond, she'll consume you entirely." Claire devised a plan. We would return to the site of the mansion on New Year's Eve and perform a ritual to sever my connection to the mirror woman. It was risky, but I was out of options. When the night came, we stood in the snow-covered lot where the mansion had once been. Claire lit candles and drew intricate symbols on the ground, chanting words I didn't understand. The air grew heavy, and a low guttural growl echoed around us. The mirror I had brought with me, a portable one Claire insisted we use as a focal point, began to glow faintly. The woman appeared, her face more twisted and monstrous than ever. "You think you can break free?" she hissed. "You're mine." The wind howled, and the candles flickered as she lunged toward me. Claire shouted for me to hold my ground, but every instinct screamed for me to run. In a desperate move, Claire smashed the mirror with a heavy stone, shattering it into countless pieces. The woman let out an ear-piercing scream, her form dissolving into smoke. But the victory came at a cost. Claire collapsed, her body limp and lifeless. She had warned me that breaking the curse might require a sacrifice, but I hadn't thought it would be her. As the first light of dawn broke, I stood alone in the lot, holding the shattered remains of the mirror. The curse was broken, or so I thought. Months later, I caught my reflection in a shop window. For a moment, I thought it was normal. But then, just as I turned away, I saw her face again, smiling cruelly. The curse wasn't gone. It had simply changed. Now I'm left wondering, how much time do I have before she comes back? And when she does, will I be the one to bring her another soul? I tried to live my life as normally as possible after that night, but the woman's face in the shop window haunted me. I told myself it was just my imagination, a lingering fear from the ordeal, but deep down, I knew the curse wasn't over. A few weeks later, I woke up to find a message scrawled on my bathroom mirror in what looked like condensation, though the room hadn't been humid. It read, "Time is running out." I stared at the words, my heart pounding. She was still with me, still watching. The strange occurrences escalated. Shadows in my apartment moved when they shouldn't. Lights flickered, even after I replaced the bulbs. Objects disappeared only to reappear in places I was sure I hadn't left them. One night, I found a cracked shard of the mirror from the ritual on my kitchen table. I had thrown all the pieces away, yet here it was, gleaming as if freshly broken. When I picked it up, I felt a sharp pain in my palm. A voice, her voice, whispered, "You can't escape me." The next morning, I noticed something on my hand where the shard had cut me. A small, faint mark resembling the intricate carvings from the mansion's mirror frame had appeared on my skin. It wasn't just a scar. It felt alive, almost like it pulsed with its own rhythm. I visited a doctor, but they couldn't explain it. The mark didn't respond to any treatments and seemed to grow darker every day. The closer New Year's Eve approached, the more vivid my nightmares became. They weren't like normal dreams. They felt real, as if I was being pulled into another world. In one dream, I saw the woman again. She was sitting in the ruins of the mansion, surrounded by the faces of everyone who had ever attended one of its cursed parties. Their hollow eyes watched me as she spoke. "Bring them, or I'll take you instead. But this time, you won't come back." Her voice was icy, final. I woke up drenched in sweat, the mark on my hand burning as if it had been branded. I was running out of time, and the woman's demand was clear. I had to bring someone else to the site of the mansion. The thought made me sick, but her presence was becoming unbearable. One night, while sitting alone in my apartment, I saw the reflection in my TV screen. She was standing behind me, her face inches from mine, whispering, "Choose." I didn't want to hurt anyone, but the mark on my hand grew darker every day, spreading across my skin like an infection. If I didn't do something, she would take me instead. Desperate, I reached out to the only person I could trust, Claire's sister, Erin. Claire had mentioned her once before, saying she was also knowledgeable about curses and the supernatural. Erin was skeptical at first, but eventually agreed to help. She believed there might be a way to transfer the curse back to its origin, but it would require confronting the woman directly. "We'll need to go back to the lot," Erin said. "And this time, we'll need more than just a ritual. You'll have to face her and make her believe you've brought someone else." On New Year's Eve, Erin and I stood in the empty lot where the mansion had once been. The air was colder than I remembered, and the night was eerily silent. Erin set up a circle of protective symbols, chanting under her breath. I held the mirror shard in my hand, its surface shimmering unnaturally in the moonlight. At exactly midnight, the ground beneath us trembled, and the woman appeared. Her form was more menacing than ever, her eyes glowing like embers. "You've come back," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "Where is my offering?" I hesitated, my mind racing. Erin nudged me, whispering, "Distract her while I finish the ritual." "I'm here to end this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You don't need anyone else. Take me." The woman smiled, her twisted face lighting up with satisfaction. "You would give yourself willingly? How noble. But it's too late for that." Before I could respond, the shard in my hand began to glow, and the mark on my skin burned like fire. The woman lunged toward me, but Erin's chant grew louder, the symbols on the ground glowing brighter. The woman screamed, her form flickering like a dying flame. "You can't break the cycle," she shrieked. With a final burst of light, she vanished, leaving the lot silent once again. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted. The mark on my hand had disappeared, and the shard was nothing more than a dull piece of glass. Erin helped me to my feet, her face pale, but determined. "She's gone," Erin said. "For now." I didn't have the strength to ask what she meant by "for now." A week later, I noticed something odd in my bathroom mirror. At first I thought it was just a smudge, but as I looked closer, I saw it. A faint outline of the woman's face, her eyes watching me, her smile wider than ever. And then, clear as day, she whispered, "See you next year."